She was only 17 when stardom came rushing into her life, landing her on the Partridge Family. Amid the bright lights and adoring fans, she found herself falling for her co-star, a young heartthrob adored by millions. But the truth he revealed would almost shatter her world. Now, at 72, Susan Dey finally speaks, and what she shares is heartbreaking. For the first time, the story she kept buried for decades comes to light. When the Partridge Family hit television screens in 1970, America saw only joy and harmony, bright costumes, catchy songs, a wholesome family act. Behind the smiles, however, another story was quietly unfolding. Susan Dey, barely a teenager, was drawn to David Cassidy in ways that went beyond friendship. Hours spent rehearsing lines, sharing meals, and talking through the pressures of sudden fame became moments she cherished. To her, it felt like something more, and she clung to the hope that he might feel the same. For years, she kept those feelings to herself, afraid of rejection and terrified of disrupting the on-screen chemistry that had made them both stars. But David sensed her affection, even if she never said it aloud. The problem was, he didn't feel the same. To him, Susan was a friend, someone safe, someone he respected, but not someone he wanted romantically. His life was already a whirlwind of teen idol fame, fans, groupies, and endless opportunities that left little room for anything serious. The truth emerged in 1994 when Cassidy published his memoir, Come On, Get Happy, Fear and Loathing on the Partridge Family Bus. In it, he recounted Susan's crush with shocking candor, explaining why he couldn't return her feelings. For Susan, who had carried that private heartache silently for decades, it felt like betrayal. The pain she had guarded was suddenly exposed to the world without her consent. While David's words carried humor and regret, Susan's silence was louder, quiet testament to the wound that had been laid bare. She didn't comment publicly, didn't attend reunions, never forgave the exposure of something so intimate. Yet heartbreak was only one shadow among many in Susan's life. Behind the scenes, her struggles ran deeper than unrequited love. Fame had arrived like a tidal wave, and she was barely prepared to stand in its flood. While fans adored the sunny, flawless image of Lori Partridge on screen, Susan's reality was fragile. The pressures to look perfect, to perform without faltering, became suffocating. Beneath the bright lights and the smile for the camera, she was quietly crumbling. In the midst of the show's success, Susan developed a painful eating disorder, a secret struggle that consumed her while the world only saw the cheerful teen star. She was desperate to meet the impossible standards of Hollywood beauty. And as the attention on her grew, so did her struggle. At that time, very few people spoke openly about disorders like anorexia. It was hidden, shameful, and isolating. Co-stars, fans, even close friends had no idea the depth of her suffering. She learned to smile through it, to hide the truth. Even as her health quietly deteriorated, if her disorder wasn't enough, the media soon made everything worse. Tabloids stalked her every move, eager to pounce on any slip, any scandal. In one of the most shocking invasions of privacy, a reporter actually infiltrated her Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. She had gone there seeking a safe place to heal, only to discover that someone in the circle was secretly taking notes for a story. The betrayal cut deep, leaving scars that never fully healed. It confirmed the fear she had always carried in Hollywood. No one could be trusted. The pressure to be perfect, combined with betrayal from those she thought were allies, hardened her view of fame. What the world saw as glamorous, Susan experienced as an unrelenting assault on her privacy and sanity. She retreated further inward, carving out ways to protect herself from an industry that had already taken too much. Meanwhile, David Cassidy was thriving. The teen idol traveled the world, basked in adoration, and enjoyed the perks of superstardom. Susan, by contrast, fought a quiet war within herself. Their lives, so intertwined on screen, were drifting further apart off camera. The cheerful episodes aired weekly, but no one knew what she was carrying behind the scenes. And then came another blow, one that would expose her private pain to the world. In 1994, David Cassidy released his memoir, Come On, Get Happy, Fear and Loathing on the Partridge Family Bus. And buried within its pages was a revelation that struck like a dagger to Susan's heart. He wrote in detail about her long-hidden crush, admitting he had always known about her feelings, but could never return them to casual readers. It might have seemed harmless, even candid, but for Susan, who had carried that heartbreak silently for decades, it was a profound betrayal. For years, she had stayed quiet, dignified, never confirming or denying rumors, never exposing her emotional wounds. And suddenly, her secret was laid bare for the world, packaged as entertainment in a best-selling book. Cassidy didn't stop there. He explained why he had rejected her, framing their closeness as purely on-screen chemistry. He claimed he cared for her as a friend, but never in a deeper way. To the readers, it may have sounded playful or light-hearted. To Susan, it was devastating. The humiliation was unbearable, decades of private pain exposed, reduced to a story for others to consume, leaving her to reconcile the loss, the betrayal, and the memory of a heartbreak she had once kept sacred. Her most private emotions hadn't just been exposed, they had been dissected publicly by the very person she once trusted. Susan's response was silence, but her actions spoke louder than words ever could. She began distancing herself from anything connected to the Partridge Family. As cast reunions became popular over the years, she never showed up. She declined interviews that focused on the show and flatly refused to participate in nostalgia specials celebrating that era. When asked why, she gave no comment. Insiders believed her resentment toward Cassidy was the reason she cut ties completely. David, for his part, would later express regret. He admitted in interviews that perhaps he shouldn't have been so candid about Susan's feelings, but by then, the damage was done. His confession had already cast a long shadow over their relationship, turning what might have been a private chapter into a permanent headline. Fans noticed. Whenever the cast reunited, Susan's absence became a statement louder than words of quiet protest, a refusal to let Hollywood parade her heartbreak for ratings. She had drawn a line, and crossing it meant losing one of her closest connections forever. But why did she remain silent for so many years? Why allow others to tell her story without ever defending herself? That's where her life took a much deeper, more mysterious turn. The reasons she waited until her 70s to finally speak revealed just how much pain she had carried all along. For decades, Susan Dey's silence became as much a mystery as her story. Fans speculated, reporters probed, even fellow cast members wondered why she refused to speak out about her time with David Cassidy. The truth is, silence was her shield. After being burned by tabloid scrutiny, betrayed by Cassidy's memoir, and exposed in her most private struggles, she chose withdrawal over confrontation. She turned her back almost entirely on Hollywood, while her career stretched into the 1980s with a celebrated role on LA Law. By the late 1990s, she had walked away from the industry. No more television spots, no reunion specials, no interviews about the good old days. To Susan, talking about the Partridge Family meant reopening wounds that had never healed. Instead, she built a quiet life away from the glare of Hollywood, raising a family in upstate New York with her husband. So why wait until her 70s to finally break the silence? Time and perspective held the answer. She had spent much of her adulthood carrying resentment, not just toward David Cassidy, but toward an industry that had chewed her up and spat her out. With Cassidy's passing in 2017, the chance for reconciliation was gone. Yet his death also freed her from the fear of confrontation. She no longer had to worry about how he would react to her words or how the media might pit them against each other. At last, she could tell her story on her own terms, with the quiet authority of someone who had survived heartbreak, betrayal, and the relentless glare of fame. There was also a deeper layer healing. Many who struggle with disorders, heartbreak, and betrayal need decades before they can face those scars publicly. Susan was no different. By the time she reached 72, she had lived long enough to watch her story rewritten by others over and over. Fans assumed she was bitter, aloof, or cold. She wanted the record corrected. She wanted people to hear the truth, not filtered through Cassidy's book or the tabloids, but in her own voice. It wasn't about revenge or stirring drama. It was about finally unburdening herself of something she had carried for 50 years. The silence that had once been her protection had become her prison. At 72, she realized she didn't want to leave the world with her story untold. When she finally spoke, what she revealed shocked even those who thought they knew every detail of the saga. It wasn't just about unrequited love. It was about the devastating reality she had lived with for decades. Susan admitted that her love for David Cassidy had shaped much of her early life, not as a romantic fairy tale, but in a way that left lasting scars. It wasn't the rejection itself that broke her. It was how it had been exposed to the world without her consent. Reading Cassidy's memoir in the mid-1990s felt like a betrayal she could never recover from. Not because she was ashamed of loving him, but because he had turned something deeply personal into entertainment for strangers. That single moment was why she walked away from Partridge Family reunions forever. Every invitation was a reminder of that book, that exposure, that wound. But there was more. Her silence wasn't just about David. It was about survival. She confessed that at the height of her struggles, when tabloids had infiltrated her AA meetings and fans saw her only as the perfect Lori Partridge, she had felt utterly alone. She had no one she could trust fully, no one she could turn to without fear of exploitation. For years, she carried thoughts she never dared share, questioning whether she could keep going under the crushing weight of fame and betrayal. The devastating truth wasn't merely that she loved David Cassidy and was rejected. It was that the entire experience nearly broke her spirit. She carried the pain of unrequited love, the humiliation of public exposure, and the loneliness of being unable to trust anyone in her orbit to the outside world. Susan Dey looked like the girl who had it all. Behind closed doors, she was barely holding herself together. When she revealed all of this at 72, fans were stunned. It wasn't the scandal they expected. It was a confession of how much pain she had hidden, how much damage the fame machine had done, and how one man's careless words had echoed through her life for decades. Her truth wasn't about revenge, and it wasn't about shaming Cassidy. It was about finally being heard, speaking in her own words before it was too late. Yet her revelation raised another haunting question. How many others from that golden age of television carried the same hidden wounds? Smiling on screen while breaking inside? Susan's story was deeply personal, but it pointed to a much larger tragedy that Hollywood never wanted anyone to see. To the outside world, the Partridge Family was a dream fame. Money, millions of fans screaming their names. But for those living inside it, stardom carried a price far higher than anyone imagined. Susan Dey's story showed how fame at a young age could twist reality, distort relationships, and leave scars that never fully heal. The pressure wasn't just about looking good on camera, it was about perfection. Never aging, never slipping, never revealing weakness. Susan's eating disorder and her struggles with privacy were symptoms of a much larger disease: Hollywood's relentless machine. Every actor on the show, especially the younger ones, felt it. But Susan carried the added weight of being emotionally tied to someone whose career revolved around adoration from strangers. David Cassidy was the ultimate teen idol. He lived for the stage, for the rush of attention, for the endless applause. That kind of lifestyle left little room for someone like Susan, who craved genuine connection. Stardom magnified their differences. For David, relationships were temporary distractions. For Susan, they were the only real thing she could hold on to. The imbalance left her isolated, even when she was surrounded by castmates and cameras. The hidden costs didn't stop there. Privacy became a myth. Susan's struggles with tabloids showed just how ruthless the industry could be. Fans felt entitled to pieces of her life simply because she appeared in their living rooms once a week. Reporters crossed lines, friends betrayed confidences, and Hollywood executives treated her like a product instead of a person. Every smile on screen came at the expense of something off-screen: her health, her trust, her happiness. Looking back, Susan has spoken about how damaging that environment was. Fame, she explained, doesn't just elevate you, it traps you. It magnifies heartbreak, mistakes, and secrets, turning them into headlines. Once it's out there, there's no taking it back. This is why her eventual reveal about David Cassidy carried so much weight. It wasn't just about him. It was about everything that fame had cost her. It's about the life she might have lived if she hadn't been thrust into the spotlight as a teenager. Her confession at 72 wasn't only personal, it was a warning. Stardom looks beautiful from the outside, but behind the glitter lies a graveyard of broken trust, shattered dreams, and private battles the audience never sees. When Susan finally laid it all bare, the world reacted. Fans who once adored the perfect Lori Partridge were forced to confront the pain of the woman who played her. Some were shocked, some sympathetic, and some angry that the truth had been hidden for so long. But no matter the reaction, one thing was certain: the silence was broken, and nothing would ever look the same again. When Susan Dey finally let the truth spill, after more than 50 years, the reaction was electric. Fans who had grown up idolizing the Partridge Family could hardly believe what they were hearing. The perfect Lori Partridge, the smiling teenager who embodied innocence and harmony, was suddenly revealed as a woman who had endured heartbreak, humiliation, and decades of private suffering. It shattered the illusion, forcing many to see the show in an entirely new light. Social media ignited with debates. Some rushed to defend David Cassidy, noting his later struggles with alcohol, dementia, and the regrets that came with fame. Others argued that Susan had every right to finally speak, that her decades of silence had been an act of survival, and that her voice deserved to be heard without judgment. Clips of old Partridge Family episodes resurfaced online, with fans rewatching them through fresh eyes, searching for cracks in the smiles and moments where, perhaps, Susan's pain had slipped through the mask. The entertainment press devoured the story. Headlines framed it as Susan's revenge. But anyone listening closely could see it wasn't about vengeance. It was about closure. She hadn't come forward to smear David's memory. She had come forward to reclaim her own. After decades of silence, she refused to let her story be told only by tabloids or the pages of a memoir she had never consented to. Her revelation also reignited conversations about the darker side of fame. The pressures placed on child and teen stars, the lack of mental health support in Hollywood, and the toxic culture of the 1970s entertainment industry. Susan's story became part of a larger reckoning, forcing people to ask how many other stars carried hidden scars we would never know about. Yet the most striking part of her revelation was how deeply it resonated with people. Fans who had endured heartbreak, betrayal, or private struggles saw themselves in Susan Dey. Her vulnerability transformed her, from an untouchable TV icon into someone profoundly human. At 72, Susan reminded the world that behind every smiling face on screen, there is a story we don't see in sometimes. That story is far more devastating, more powerful, and more unforgettable than anything a script could ever capture.